You're listening to That Thing Called Inclusion, a podcast filled with the ramblings of a Northern Irish blind man and a wheelchair-using English woman. Join our disabled duo as they share their lived experiences of disability and working within the world of recruitment. Let's end the stigma together. Let's talk about that thing called inclusion.
Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everybody, we are That Thing Called Inclusion, and yes, we do still sound like a movie trailer, don't we, Jamie?
Yes, we do. It's Hollywood.
Absolutely amazing. So welcome back to our podcast. For those who listened in to the last one, we were talking about our recruitment histories, our jobs for a little bit, and how terrible it was. So today, we've got a little treat for you, don't we, Jamie?
We do indeed. We have two special guests who work within the fabulous world of recruitment. Two guests that both of them one of them I've actually interviewed with, and that is Siobhan Kerr, who works with us at AMS.
Hi.
And then we are also joined by the absolutely fabulous Jamie Rose, who I have been following LinkedIn for some time, who has created his own community and actually works recruiting recruiters. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Very excited.
It's really exciting. I'm sure you can hear, and Fuchsia's off camera today. She has broken her wrist, and if you've not followed that journey, please check out her Twitter. We now know that Rome is completely inaccessible, don't we, Fuchsia?
Well, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I took a curb wrong and I wasn't paying attention. But no, it is a good city to go around if you're disabled, but you do really have to be careful with the pavements. But yeah, I was silly and I look rough, and didn't really want to show my face today. Sorry, guys.
Don't be worrying. And just another apology from me because I have put my back out. The joys of having sciatica, and that is due to poor posture. I have so many nerves trapped. So if you see me whine and peeing, or you hear it, it means I've not edited it out properly, so do not panic. So I want to hand over to one of our guests here just to do an introduction. So we'll go over to Siobhan. Siobhan, do you want to do an introduction? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So I am a team leader at Alexander Mann Solutions, AMS. I currently look after two clients who are in the financial services sector, and the main roles that my team recruit for are customer service, sort of call centre roles, and administrators. Those roles are a mixture of home-based, office-based, and hybrid. I've been in recruitment for, nearly 8 years now. Like a lot of people, fell into recruitment, absolutely. Went into interview as a temp with a recruitment agency and came out as a sourcer. And then I joined AMS about 4.5 years ago now. Started off as a recruiter, became a senior recruiter, and then about a year ago became a team leader. And my team are incredibly diverse, particularly around mental health. So I have learned a lot in the last year, and kind of learnt different ways of working to make sure that everybody is getting what they need. With regards to sort of diversity and inclusion, it's always been something that's so important to me, because prior to recruitment, I worked in childcare for 10 years, and I was the special educational needs coordinator. So I had a lot of children with Down syndrome, with autism. We had a few children with physical disabilities. So making sure that everything was accessible to everybody from when they were 6 months old until they were 5 and they went to school. It's been something that's a passion to me for a very long time.
Absolutely brilliant. And Siobhan, I've sat in on interviews with you, and I just want to say that it was the best interview. Like, if I was the candidate, I would have been sold. I had the best time in that interview, and I was interviewing with you. So I just, when we were on it, when we came to do this episode, I was like, who can I get on here who I know is really good in interviews and I know will bring that energy and that excitement? It's like, Siobhan, straight away, Siobhan.
Oh, thanks.
And then when I was thinking of who else we could bring, I was like, Jamie Rose has such an impact on LinkedIn. His content is so engaging. The way he speaks about the candidate journey and about his client expectations and the roles, it's really inspiring. And I'm going to be honest, I may have had to take some influence from Jamie's group and from himself. So, Jamie, do you want to tell us a little bit about you before I sell you?
Yeah, so 14, I realised actually this year will be my 15th year in recruitment, which it doesn't look like that's just Botox, but 15 years, 15 years. And I have to be completely honest, I think when I first started in recruitment, it probably was purely classified as a sales job. I fell into it and I always enjoyed it. But for me, where things really changed, I guess partly mindset, and now what I kind of advocate is that I kind of worked my way through the ranks job by job, and literally then I was fired when it was confirmed that I was gay, and they changed my HR records to try and show that I was sick when I wasn't. There was all these things that happened, and I ended up going through this whole process. And what I realized was that I actually got that job through another rec to rec. And I think what it really highlighted was that nobody had really taken a step back to consider what the environment was like. You know, a phone conversation deemed to be a relationship, and that's what we all moved forward on. And I think through that process, I suddenly took a step back and thought, what really happens when we hand select, instead of trying to work with everybody, what happens when we truly hand select a small group of people that we actually believe in, we want to work in. And that's what I started doing. And when I decided I needed to do something after losing my job, I decided to go down that track with Rec to Rec and help other recruiters. But rather than just deciding to work with everybody and anyone, I literally started hand selecting people who we wanted to work with, and spent a huge amount of time getting to know them. In fact, in many cases, a long time before the first job was even shared or posted. And I think that recruitment most recently, especially since COVID has transitioned, COVID, I always, my little joke about it is that it's been the biggest change to the recruitment industry since the CRM system. And I think we're now starting to think about journeys. We're starting to think about more than just a life cycle of a placement. We're starting to think about careers and development and, somebody's prospects. And for me, that is the future of recruitment, and it's so exciting. So yes, you might come to the table with 15 years experience, or you might come to the table with a couple. Recruitment now is how it should have been 10 years ago.
100%. I love what we say we fell into recruitment, because I think everybody falls into recruitment. I thought I was coming to a call center job, and I was not expecting this career. And there's so much opportunity, I think, within recruitment to you can take your passions and you can put it into your work, you can deliver it into your work. And I think what you're saying there, Jamie, about COVID really has changed the landscape of recruitment and pretty much a lot of businesses, I think, globally. And I think for me, for the disabled community and neurodiverse community, it's really opened up the opportunity to work from home. People who couldn't work before now can work from their bed, they can work from their sofa. If they have chronic pain, they don't have to travel to office. If you're having a bad day with mental health, you can stay at home. There's so much more opportunity now. And I think that I seen only about 6 months of recruitment before the pandemic hit. So I kind of say I seen it slightly pre-COVID and post-COVID. And personally, I prefer the way it's went post-COVID as just due to that opportunity.
Definitely. I feel the same way. I mean, could you imagine if I couldn't work from home? I wouldn't be able to get into London to 8CS because I wouldn't be able to use my wheelchair. So I would have to take 4 weeks off work simply because, as a wheelchair user with a broken arm, can't get anywhere, can't do anything. And, with my journey, it's been really weird, and I still can't believe that I'm actually here working in recruitment when all I wanted was a flipping job to get myself out of debt. And here I am, and it's so bizarre as a disabled woman to now be able to influence such major clients, and be able to work with them to change not only recruitment, which is what we're doing now with my client, but also, trying to help the client change as an organization as well. And that's a huge privilege. And have you, either of you two, have you ever been able to have that sort of reach, or have you seen other people do it and think, blimey, things are changing?
No, I was just going to say, I think that's what makes good recruitment, is to be able to influence not just a hiring decision, but to actually take part in cultural decisions. And I think some of that comes from the client already being in that headspace. I don't want to educate someone in the basic rules of being a good person, or hiring people over talent, but ultimately there is a part, because sometimes, and this is what I have found, people don't know how to go about starting a process when they're trying to be more diverse, because they're worried about saying the wrong thing. How do you write an inclusive job advert? How do you try and appeal to people when actually you're not sure where to start? And I find that's a really good conversation to have. Now, I'm not perfect in it by any means, but actually just giving people a platform to start having these conversations, I find that is step one. So yeah, I think what we do as recruiters, we should be influencing people to broaden their horizon in who they're hiring and why they're hiring them.
100%. Do you know what I always say? I love when we say influencers, because we all know what a social media influencer is. I always say you have your LinkedIn influencers, and like, do you ever consider you one of them? And it's people who are creating those spaces where we can drive that change, we can have that conversation. And honestly, I think the influencing is a fundamental part of our role and future. I feel the same. It's such a 360 circle moment for us, I think. What about you, Siobhan?
So, yeah, my funny little story. Here we go. We've gone round in a circle, Fuchsia. I was in the office in Bracknell the first day that you came in, and
Oh yeah.
we had a chat. So all those years ago, however long it was.
Oh, those gosh,
Um,
billions of years ago.
and I remember talking to you about the accessibility of that building, and that really stuck with me. And then when I was speaking to my clients, and I had a better understanding of, right, if we've got a wheelchair user, what exactly is it that is needed? So, okay, you might have a ramp and a door, but has that door then got a lip or a step? Those things that probably to me hadn't really occurred to me before. And having that conversation with you opened my mind. And even down to the small things now, if I ever have to use a disabled toilet, for example, if that red string is tied up or it is not touching the floor, I am there untangling it. And it's about having that awareness of, it wouldn't have occurred to me before because it wasn't something that I needed. So these conversations need to be an everyday conversation to make sure that everybody is aware of what's needed to make sure everybody can use those facilities.
Oh, definitely. And never did fix those doors and made them electric. Not that we're in that building anymore, but
So we moved.
No.
It's inaccessible for us.
I just couldn't open the doors at all. They were just so heavy. Oh my
That
goodness.
dialogue, I volunteered many years ago in a peace and reconciliation centre in Northern Ireland, which, if you know Northern Ireland, is quite a controversial topic. So I worked in this peace and reconciliation centre, and in that centre they had a saying, and it was, through dialogue we make the biggest change. And I think that is so true, because when we are speaking to somebody, you sometimes have to ask those silly questions. I would rather somebody say to me, do you need help, support there? Are you okay? When I'm sitting squinting to see something, or you can tell I'm really panicked and frustrated because I'm not able to do something, I'd rather somebody ask me than sit there and make presumptions that, oh, he's not good at his job, he doesn't know what he's doing, or, oh, look at him over there, there must be something wrong with him. Just ask that question. Do you need support? But I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring us into a question that I think many of our listeners would probably have. What does a recruiter do? So we will start with Jamie. Jamie, what does a recruiter do? And to you, what does a recruiter do?
I think when that question always makes me think, do you remember the meme where there's like what I actually do, what my mum thinks I do, what the world thinks? That literally comes to mind. But I think at its core, a recruiter is nothing more than an extension of an organisation that can facilitate conversation. That's what we are, that's what we do. Within that, we kind of break ourselves up into a recruiter, a resourcer, but I think these boundaries more than ever are actually being blurred. I think the traditional route of a job title doing a set thing is very, very different. But ultimately, at our core, what we are is just a facilitator of conversation, aka coffee arrangers. That's what we do. We have the time and we understand what candidates want and what they need, and we're able to basically nurture those relationships over a period of time. So we're giving access to a client to kind of candidates before everybody else has access to them, and vice versa. So we're just a facilitator of good conversations at the core. I think that's what we do.
Right. And then you've mentioned resourcer. Now, to us at AMS, that is a sourcer. And again, it's all in the titles. But one of the things I learned when I came into AMS was job title's great, but it means nothing. Look at the skills, look at what you're actually doing, read your CV, ask them questions. So, Siobhan, I'm going to ask you then, what does a sourcer/resourcer do?
So, in the general scheme of things, and I'll just preface this by saying this is not what my team do. So, if it's a bit old hat, then do correct me. But the sourcer is the person who will advertise the roles, write that job ad, make sure that it's got all the information that you could need to see if it's something that's of interest to you. The sourcer will then be the person who has those initial conversations with applicants, going through their CV, going through the role, going through their history. Is it a good fit? Is the culture a good fit? And they will also search job boards for candidates for that role as well. Using a lot of keywords. We call it Boolean searching, the joy of Boolean searching. And then in the sort of general role of a sourcer, they will then pass that CV to the recruiter, who will review it and then decide whether they're going to pass it on to the hiring manager or not. And as you said, Jamie, everything gets a bit blurred. So in my team, we have talent engagement specialists, TES, TES, and they do all of that. So they do the advertising, the screening, they have the conversations with the managers, they decide who's being put forward for CV review, for interview, they give the feedback to the candidates. So they have that relationship from beginning to end with each candidate for their roles. And yeah, like I said, it's all very blurred these days.
100%. And like I always tell my mum says, when I told my mum was a sorcerer, she said, "Oh, you're a sorcerer," and still to this day will call me a sorcerer. I said, like, I make magic happen with the candidates I find, but I'm not doing magic myself. So when it comes to disability hiring or neurodiverse hiring, it's all about, I think it's all to do with that relationship. No matter what your title is, it's having that relationship with somebody. What would you say is the integral part of any relationship with any candidate you're speaking with for you to support them?
Honesty.
Start with Siobhan.
It's got to be the first. Honesty has got to be from both sides. You cannot build a relationship if a candidate is telling you what you want to hear, or if you're not giving the candidate the full, honest, good, the bad, and the ugly about that role.
So, what about you, Jamie? What would be the integral part for you?
Exactly the same. I think, what Siobhan said. The point of this is that every industry is got so many buzzwords. People understand how processes run now. Whether you're a candidate, the hiring manager, everybody gets the part they need to play. But actually, for me, I think taking it back to the good old 90s, having a good conversation with somebody, and just really being able to understand their motivations for moving and for wanting these conversations. And the other thing that I think is equally is that you're both empowered to be on the same platform, that there isn't this hierarchy at this stage, that one person is in control, because it takes two people for this process to work. And I think both people should be able to feel like they can ask and answer the same questions equally. So for me, exactly what Siobhan said, plus I would add this sense of being equally empowered, part of this process, that you both take responsibility.
Fabulous. And Fuchsia, what about you? What's the integral part for yourself?
I guess because I'm not a recruiter or a sourcer, and obviously my role is very different within the recruitment life cycle. For me, like Siobhan said, it's having those open and honest conversations. Because if I get a recruiter that doesn't understand the adjustment that I've taken, or don't understand why it's important for me, for them to reach out to me and go, look, Fuchsia, I really don't get this. Can you talk me through it? And when you have, and especially with hiring managers as well, and if you have those conversations, and there's no, what I would call pussyfooting around the situation, and you're being open and honest, it makes everything so much, and it's a better experience for the candidate as well, because you're not keeping them held on for days, and not being able to tell them why they haven't been progressed to the next stage. And I guess because I'm seeing the process from not an outsider's point of view, but certainly with an adjustment lens, rather than I need to hire this person or get them interviewed or look at their CV. I can see the more personal aspect of it as well, and how, if there isn't an open, honest communication, the candidate can feel incredibly let down and not really knowing what's going on. And I've had like a couple of because obviously I have personal conversations with my candidates, which recruiters and sources might not necessarily have. I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, the other business, they never did any of this. They never talked to me. They didn't tell me what was going on. They just rejected me. I'm pretty sure it's because of my disability. And, and it's things like that. And for me, like Siobhan said, it's so important just to talk. It's a simple thing to do, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
really is.
And it opens up so many ways of fixing things for me.
That through dialogue we make change, and it's that honesty that you have all said. I agree with that as well. For me, I was never like, I know I've talked previous episodes about my past experience of employment, and I wasn't honest at times during my employment. I didn't really disclose my disability, and when it came to maybe an assessment, I didn't ask for a bigger monitor, and I was using a tiny iPad, and at that time it was probably the first generation iPad, so I'm sure you can all imagine how terrible that was. But it was terrible. I was doing a maths assessment on it, and I can remember hitting buttons, and I also have fat fingers, so it was not good for me at all. So it was, wasn't really honest with them, but I struggled because of it. And then other times when I have disclosed my businesses, I had disclosed them, told them exactly what I needed from the start, and it wasn't passed along to the other members of the team or the people interviewing me, which then they weren't being honest internally about who I was as a candidate, what I was bringing to the table. So my next question would be, how would, when someone's trying to disclose a disability, at what stage do you feel they should disclose it? And if they do, let's start with that. What stage do you think somebody should disclose their disability?
Ooh, well, I mean, that's quite a big question. I don't think one answer maybe fits everything, but all I can go on is what my gut is telling me, and that is the disability is kind of one part of your process, and I think it needs to be equal to that. So I think it's something you need to share, but I think there is no harm in building a little bit of a rapport and a relationship with that person first. And then once you've got that you can then have that conversation with them. What we must remember, whether you're talking about the fact that you want to disclose, that you've got a disability, or anything that you want to talk about, the fundamental is you're at an interview. So that, for me, that takes step number one. This is an interview process. As we would tell anybody in this process, it's about selling yourself. It's about sharing your skills, your attributes. So for me, as that's the recruiter part of me, I would stick with that first, because that is ultimately the goal of a interview. Once you have that relationship, that's when I would recommend that it's a perfect time to raise it. But really, the bottom line is you should feel comfortable raising it whenever feels right for you. But I think where do I think it would be most efficient across the board is probably after you have that little bit of engagement and relationship with them.
Brilliant. And then Siobhan, what about yourself?
Completely agree. Get that relationship built first, because you are selling yourself first and foremost. And then maybe introducing it when you're talking about the part of the role, or that your disability is going to affect. So, for example, if I said to you, Jamie, so you're going to be on the phones all day long, you've got 5 different systems that you've got to boot up in the morning. So then at that point, you could maybe say, okay, so I do need some additional support or different programs, software, whatever the case may be. Okay, no problems. We can factor that in. I think if you kind of come in and go, hi Siobhan, I'm Jamie, and I've got visual impairment, right? Okay, hi, how are you? It's as Jamie said, build that rapport first of all, build that relationship, and also it will then give the person that you're speaking to, they will then have more confidence and be more comfortable to ask you, what are your requirements, what support do you need? And if it's something that I have no idea about, I've never heard of it, or I don't know what the situation is, I will then feel more comfortable to ask you more questions, so that I can then support your application and your interview process. And hopefully when you start the job, everything that you would need would be in place. So it's, again, all about that rapport building. And then when you're comfortable, you might not feel comfortable telling them on the phone. So after that call, send an email, maybe just drop them a message just to let you know this is the adjustments that I would also need. Because it can be intimidating, and as recruiters we speak to a lot of people every day, so we are used to having very open conversations very quickly. That might not be your situation.
100%. And like you said there about the 5 different systems, and I had alarm bells in my head going, oh my God, am I going to use all these systems? And I know it's metaphoric, but that's me at interview. And that's pretty much a lot of disabled and neurodiverse people at interview, when they hear something that they know that they're going to struggle with. It's alarm bells, and the wall goes up for me. And I start to become a little bit more, I should have that one back, I hurt my back. But the wall definitely goes up. And then I begin to panic. And at that stage there, you panic in your head. You've been asked to sell yourself, and you start to stumble on your words. You're tripping over yourself, and it's not a great experience. And for me, I think that you're talking about that relationship building, that rapport building. That is essentially what some businesses now are doing with roles like Fuchsia. Fuchsia is an individual there to support disabled and neurodiverse individuals right from the get-go, building that relationships. And then we also have initiatives now, especially within the UK, like the likes of Disability Confident, where we're kind of encouraging people to self-disclose before the interview. So if we can do those screening calls, we turn them into screening calls or Teams interviews. If you're doing a face-to-face interview, making sure you have those adjustments in place. And I think that when it comes to the interview stage, you're 100% right. It should not be about your disability. It should be about what you're bringing to this company, what skills you have, and how are you going to grow within that business, because it has to be that culture fit. And if you're at an interview, as we discussed in previous episodes, you should have already looked at this company as a disabled and neurodiverse person. You will know if this is the right place for you, if they have values that align to your own, if they have a culture that is inclusive. Fuchsia, what about yourself there? What would you say would be, when you're passing across the candidate to the recruiters, what way do you do that, and what kind of tips would you give around supporting that person? Loaded question.
Good question. I mean, it's a very personal journey disclosing, I think, and obviously with the nature of my client, people tend to disclose right at the beginning because there's boxes to tick if they want to be under the disability confidence scheme and reasonable adjustments. I actually didn't tick those boxes when I applied to the client because I didn't want to disclose, and I didn't want to have those awkward conversations because I just wanted a flipping job. because I'd been turned down for so many jobs by disclosing that I was a wheelchair user that I was getting sick of it. Yeah. So what was the second part of that question? Because I've lost my train of thought now. I'm like, I've got really deep into my head then, thinking about my own personal journey. Oh, hooray, autism.
So the second part, you answered really well now, by the way. The second part is when you are having those conversations with recruiters, what sort of tips would you give for supporting that person?
Yeah, so when it comes with the recruiters, it's been a very long journey with my recruiters, and it's still ongoing because you never stop learning. And there was a perception for quite a while that when I was putting the adjustments in place for the recruitment process, a lot of the recruiters coming back to me going, "Future, this is very generic. Why are all the adjustments the same?" I'm like, because that's basically what disabled people need. That's it. I mean, yeah, sometimes you're going to get, a very unique adjustment, but most of the time it's having that extra time, having the questions before the interview, having breaks during the interview. It is incredibly generic, and it was explaining that to the recruiters and the sources, like, yeah, you're going to get hundreds of these a week. And this is why. It's because this is what disabled people need for the recruitment process alone. If we're going to go into adjustments for the workplace, you'll see an incredibly different RA for every person. And it was just getting over that hurdle with the recruiters, trying to like get them to think that not all disabilities are the same at all. And I could be sitting next to an autistic wheelchair user who's got mental health problems like me, but we're going to experience our disabilities completely differently because of how we were brought up, where we live, family support, education, anything like that. But our adjustments might be exactly the same for a certain part of the process. And it was getting the recruiters on board with some of that. And with my client, when we bring in new, because we're expanding our department for recruiting, so when new recruiters and sources are brought on board, I actually have a one-to-one conversation with them about what it's like to be a disabled person, what my journey has been, and this is why I do what I do. And it's really opened up and made an honest culture of the recruitment life cycle, which never happened before. It was like, oh, we don't talk about this, we can't possibly talk about this. Disability is a dirty word, and it's just made everything easier for everyone, I think, and it's really just taken the pressure off the recruiters as well. They're not having to second guess everything.
And I like what you said there about disability being a dirty word. I think for years disability has been forgotten when it comes to diversity and inclusion. It's kind of always been in the back burner. Oh, we'll do gender this year, or we'll do sexual orientation this year. It's kind of this year's hot theme, and disability, I think, always takes that back burner. And then you see companies coming out with words like, oh, this is our ability group or our ability employee resource group. And I'm going to be honest, that makes me cringe because I think, what are you talking about? It's a disability. Why are you afraid to say this word? Well, this isn't an ability. If I chose the ability, I'd be invisible. Like, what are you talking about? So I think it's taken away that stigma from the word. But coming back to the interview then, I want to try to provide some tips for our listeners who maybe are seeking a new job. And we've already spoke about attraction. So when it comes to applying, let's look at a CV. What tips would you have for writing a compelling CV? And we'll start with Jamie.
So I think the easiest change most people can make is stop bullet pointing the job description, because I don't think it demonstrates your capability. It's just demonstrating the job you're doing. So instead of bullet pointing, I don't know, managing a diary, talk about the impact that has, talk about the benefits of what you're doing. So I really enjoy seeing CVs where I'm reading about what they bring to the role. What are they solving? What problem are they in charge? And I think what that enables you to do is to empower the work that you're doing as well, whereas just listing a job description, I mean, fine, but it's only going to go so far. It is 2022 as well. For me, I always expect to see a even LinkedIn to an even CV. In fact, I would say personally, I don't really use CVs anymore. So I think that to have the social side in line with the traditional paper as well, I think that can make a huge difference when applying, because let's be honest, most of us are nosy and interested all at the same time. And the first thing we're going to do is hop on over to LinkedIn. And I think being able to take a picture in the sense of being able to read somebody, what they've shared about themselves and seeing what they're interested in. For me, I like that. LinkedIn is a fabulous way of adding a bit of personality to what should have been a traditional CV. So embrace it and use it to the best you can. But my biggest tip is, if you're just listing bullet point after bullet point of the job description, rethink it, go back in and think, what am I actually solving by doing this bullet point? Then delete it and put that in. And I think instantly you'll find that it will change. The other thing I always say as well, a CV is designed to start conversations. Do not put everything in a CV and then don't leave yourself anything to talk about. Make sure when you're doing a CV on a separate Word document, or however you want to do it, think about options that you could expand on that and talk about that. So when you do start these conversations, you can take it a level deeper. I mean, as a recruiter, literally it blows my mind when you talk to someone and they're able to take everything to that next level. It's just, you know, at the end of the day, we've got jobs that need filling, you know, that's what we need. So think about how you present it on a CV, then take it a level deeper. If you're struggling to get a job and for some reason you feel like you've been held back, that's fine. I'm always happy as a recruiter to talk about hobbies. I'm interested to talk about, you know, experiences that you've gained in workplaces that maybe you volunteered at. Don't let it be, it doesn't need to be traditional. I'm willing to talk to you about anything, but I can only talk about it if there's an invitation to do so, and that's what the CV should be. So even if it's not a traditional job, go with the flow, work with what you've got, it's yours, own it, and that's what we'll talk about.
I really like that. And you know, LinkedIn, we've told our listeners in previous episodes, get on LinkedIn. And over the past year, I've definitely seen a lot of people who have struggled with employment due to either disability or being neurodiverse, struggled with employment and have lost jobs and have created a post and have managed to secure roles because it's through lots of attention from people in different companies, and they managed to secure roles. And I think that on the conversation side of LinkedIn, you know, you have your hashtags. It's a bit not like Twitter. I over hashtag. I know I do, but
Yes, they're like 3 to 5, 12.
Scrolling. But is this post ever going to end?
Because I can't see it, and I don't know. But with the hashtags, I think that you go on, you type in disability employment, you click on that, you go find these posts, and there's companies out there who will use that to attract diverse talent as well. Companies are talking about what they're doing on LinkedIn when it comes to inclusion. So if you are a listener, get yourself on LinkedIn and follow those companies, follow those hashtags, and there is opportunity there. And I love what you said there, Jamie, with the CV as well. It's all about those transferable skills. So it is, no matter what you've come from. And
it's so true. Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry, that made me laugh. Someone emailed me the other day without messaging me on LinkedIn. I nearly fell off my chair. I was like, what is this? Because I'm so used to someone messaging me on LinkedIn. When they emailed me, I was like, I don't know who this person is. So the first thing I do. So the other thing, you know, if you're feeling a bit nervous and you feel like you've not been given, you know, you're not quite there yet, you know what? LinkedIn is great. You can start just tapping that little like button on someone's post. You know, you can get involved in a level that feels comfortable for you, and that's something we haven't seen in traditional recruitment thus far, because you either apply or you don't. LinkedIn lets you dip your toe in as far as you're comfortable. It lets you build up a bit of that rapport with people. So, you know, if you're not quite feeling it because you've been knocked back a few times because everyone keeps saying no, LinkedIn is that great little way to start tapping that like button, start following them, you know, give it a couple of days and connect with them. So from even just stepping away from a traditional CV, I mean, it's basically okay to kind of get involved with people on there, isn't it? You know, like I've had the odd person message me to say, Jamie, please stop liking my content, but not very often, you know, for the most part. It's, you know, and I really like that, all jokes aside, it gives you the ability to get yourself seen by the right people. And it's amazing, just like following, I don't know, say they want to follow you, Jamie, or Fuchsia, they can then see who are you liking and engaging with, and they almost can then partake in your conversations. And before you know it, this whole each person on LinkedIn has their own little world, and the minute you start involving in theirs, everything else just opens up. It's like a little gift that keeps on giving, and I love it. I'm obsessed. So definitely, if you do yourself one favor, create a profile, and even if you don't want to post content, get involved with people who share your opinion. I think that's definitely the way forward.
100%. There's I can't remember if it's not a saying. There's a thing that it says that you are 5 connections away from somebody, who that person you're looking for. I can't remember how it came about. I know it's something to do with a letter, but I'm gonna find that because that's so true to LinkedIn. I had somebody actually message me and say, "You're sharing all this content and it's really helping me," and I was just like, "It's really helping me too. This is great." And I was just a complete random person, and I think it's just that networking. You find there's so much opportunity on there. Such a massive platform. It blows my wee mind every time I go on it when I'm trying to do my post. I get crazy with hashtags. But Siobhan, what about you?
So my world of recruitment is slightly different to Jamie's. We are still a bit old fashioned in the whole customer service and administrator roles, in that a lot of what we get is through recommendations, referrals. So speak to your friends. Where are they applying? Where are they interviewing? Getting that way. Any good recruiter worth their salt will always ask, do you know anybody else who's interested in any roles at the moment? So, get your friends to share that information. And with regards to your CV, I would say tailor it to the role that you're applying for. So again, in my world, if you are applying for a customer service role and your CV is very admin heavy, we're going to look at that and go, not the right fit. So just tweak it. And again, like Jamie said, if you haven't, if you've been struggling to find work or you're going into a new field, there will be something that you can transfer those skills. I can guarantee you. You've done admin in your home life. You've done admin somewhere. You've done admin at school, even if you're, a recent school leaver, or customer service. Anything that you have done, use that to show your skills. For the level of roles that we are looking at, we are looking for people who have the essential skills, and we can teach them everything else. So if you can demonstrate, I can have conversations with people at all levels. I can, in our customer service roles, I can calm somebody down when they're calling me and they're really upset and not take it personally. Demonstrate those skills, because we're not expecting you to know everything about the role and all the systems that they use and all of their rules and regulations. But if you can demonstrate that you are teachable, keen to learn, that is the key part for us.
100%. And one thing I love myself with a CV is I love a splash of colour in a CV. When a CV stands out, it has a splash of colour. I love that, and I will tell somebody on a screening call or an interview, I will take the time to say your CV is really drew my eye. And then for me, it actually leads into talking about my site and the inclusion, what we do at the MS and what we do in that piece. So I think that a splash of colour really does stand out. So I am conscious of time because, as usual, we do like to get carried away and carry the conversation here. So what I wanted to do is just, before we move on to our Uninclusive Rant of the Week, what would be your number one tip for somebody? So we've looked at the CV. What is your number one tip for a job seeker at interview? So either face-to-face or over Teams, remote, whatever that's been held.
For me, it would be, the number one tip is learn about that company and their values, and then link that to your values, because that's how they will see your future with that company. If they go, right, oh yeah, that one works well with that, oh yeah, that would work well. That is the biggest thing for me.
Fantastic. And Jamie?
I'm going to go with just everything we've spoken about, like whatever disability, whatever it is, it's one part of what you offer. And I think it's about keeping it in proportion to everything everything else. It's so easy to let your mind step in, and you know what happens. It takes you all these weird and wonderful places. Some of it's helpful, some of it's not. So my biggest tip is keep it to the same, it's one part of you. It needs to make one part of the process. So you go in and you blink and well sell everything that you're good at, the reasons why you'd be good at the job, and just take control and responsibility for having a good interview.
100%. That is two fantastic bits of advice there. So look, I am sad that we're going to move on to wrap up for the episode, but this has been absolutely fantastic. I think that we could probably sit and talk for hours. I hope that we can get you both back, as this part of our podcast we want to do this as a kind of every couple of weeks. We want to provide tips, we want to provide knowledge, and we'll bring different recruiters, sources. Hopefully Siobhan and Jamie will maybe come back. And then towards the end of it, we would like to try to maybe create a toolkit which we could provide to both businesses and to our listeners. So moving on to the end of the podcast is our uninclusive rant of the week. So for anyone who's not listened to the podcast before, this is a moment that has really grinded our gears this week. A moment that has been uninclusive, a moment that has made us frustrated, or a moment that we have went, what the heck is going on there? So will we start off with Siobhan? What has been your rant this week?
So I was talking to somebody who is transgender, and she was telling me about she started a new role fairly recently, and nobody knew. They were quite old school, and nobody knew how to bring up the conversation with her. And I just thought, in this day and age, come on, we should be more open to all kinds of conversations. She's doing fantastically well now. She's really enjoying it, and she's built those relationships. But it was a struggle for her in her first couple of weeks, and I just thought that's not fair. Everybody's nervous enough in their first couple of weeks. You don't need to add anything else to it.
Definitely.
100%.
Oh goodness.
And Jamie, what about you? What is your rant this week?
A guy on LinkedIn called Jamie Shields, nightmare. I mean, where do we start? my biggest rant, I feel like I have to choose my battle here, is probably the idea that flexible working, home working, it's really focused towards parents. I see so much of it focused towards that, but actually it's good for anyone, and I always try and say that when people are like, oh, it would be good for a mum, it would be good for a dad. I'm like, it's good for me, and I own 2 chihuahuas. I mean, let's stop defining flexibility as having to be parent related. So that's a big bugbear. I think it's great for parents as well, but I think flexibility works for everyone regardless. So that is my real frustration.
Definitely.
100%. And then our fabulous future. What is your rant this week, my love?
Not being able to use my flipping wheelchair because I've broken my flipping arm. Do you understand how mortifying it is to get your ex-husband to take you to hospital because you've broken your arm on a holiday, and he has to push you everywhere because, like a div, I can't do anything. Honestly, 4 weeks of this. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I can't drive. I can't look after myself. I can't shower. And I did this to myself. So there you go. Fuchsia's angry. I didn't want to be.
That's a worthy rant, but lie up and heal up. I laughed there, and as I said, I put my back out, and you probably see my face. You hurt yourself.
Not making me laugh.
Now you hurt me. And look, my rant is going to be a bit following on from Jamie's. Now, do you know the Candy Man? Oh no, it's not the Muffin Man, isn't it? Do you know the Muffin Man? That was not even that went off my head.
Where are we going with this?
I kind of went off on a tangent and then realised, my mind jumped. So, Lord Alan Sugar, the host of The Apprentice, did a tweet recently where he said that working from home is bullshit, it's unproductive, and that really companies shouldn't be doing it. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but when I work at home, I work tirelessly. I actually throw everything in. I'm more productive. I'm able to get away from my computer when I need to. I feel more comfortable using my adjustments. And I'm not alone. As Jamie says, this benefits everybody. Companies are seeing the benefit of it. If they weren't, some of them wouldn't be dropping down to 4-day working weeks. So for me, it's opened up the possibility to work from home for people who maybe never had the opportunity to work before, people with chronic pain, people maybe who are bedbound, people who maybe can't leave the house, whatever that condition is, or whatever is going on in your life at that moment, whether it's your parent, your father, 2 chihuahua babies, whether it is you've hurt your back or you broke your wrist, whatever that reason is, it's not bullshit. It's an opportunity and it's flexible working. And it's the future.
I'm far more productive at home. Siobhan knows I can't get through flipping doors in some buildings, so what's the point? You know, I get to a building and I can't get into it or get around it because someone put carpet down, which is just a struggle for any wheelchair user. And then I sit at my desk and I'm like, oh, I want to go home now. I'm exhausted. If I'm at home, I'm probably working way too much. I have my bosses telling me to go to bed because I'm just still working at like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the evening. But we could talk about this for years, couldn't we? And just keep going on about it.
Maybe one day we'll get Lord Sugar on to explain what he meant, because it was
please don't. I'm calling him a dick. It won't be a very professional conversation, Jamie.
Behind camera.
Like, Fuchsia can't join this podcast this week because she's going to keep dropping the F-bomb. Goodness me. We are professionals, honestly.
It's been a really great episode. I'm choking away laughing over here. But I want to thank Siobhan and Jamie so much for coming and joining us. We will post your LinkedIn links on our website. And as I said, we will hopefully get you back in the future. But from me, a massive thank you.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
And to our listeners,
thank you for having us.
Bye, everybody. Bye. See you next time.
You've been listening to That Thing Called Inclusion. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Check out our website, www.thatthingcalledInclusion.com, for transcripts of each episode, or on YouTube for video and closed captions. Or check out our socials at That Inclusion. If you'd like to join us on the show as a guest speaker or advocate organization, then please drop us an email at info@thatthingcalledInclusion.com. Until next time, stay inclusive.